Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this Straight Talk session with Vitality. My name is Jamie, and I'm one of the Vitality coaches who specializes in physical activity. So I'm not the subject of today's topic, but I am really lucky to be joined by Henri, who is our mental health and wellbeing expert. So, Henri, the topic today is all about difficult emotions and uncomfortable feelings. You're going to be talking us through your approach to that and how it might differ from maybe some of the conventional ways that we hear people talking about these things. But before we get into the chat, good to have you. Do you want to just give everyone a quick intro as to who you are, a little bit more about you?
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to be here. So my name is Henri Saha. I've been working in this field for about 10 years now. Started working with athletes, sports people on decision making, on dealing with mistakes, on confidence, concentration, that kind of thing. And then about 4 years ago, I started to really deepen my understanding into psychology, and what I really look at is the underpinnings, the mechanisms that are doing the heavy lifting, if you like, and started to work with more regular people with regular challenges, so stress, anxiety, day-to-day things, less work with sports people and more work with just the general public. So that's what brings me to Vitality and what brings me with Jamie today. It's like,
Perfect.
yeah, I feel like it's been a while since we've been on a session together. So nice to be
Yeah,
here.
well, I guess just to give people a bit of context to this, Henri and I used to have endless and hours worth of conversation about this topic and his approach. And a lot of the time it was me understanding that. I think in more recent times, it's probably been me questioning more and having more of my own opinion. And it's a topic that I think is really important. But Henri's message is one that I think can help a lot of people in a way that they maybe didn't realize. So the first thing to say is this is your session, so get involved in the comments. Firstly, if you just want to say hi, but question Henri, give him your thoughts, have your input, have your say. My role is essentially to ask the questions and be the voice of everyone watching. So please do make sure that you get involved. But Henri, we're talking about difficult emotions and uncomfortable feelings, and this is all ahead of Mental Health Awareness Week, which is happening in May. So we've got a full program. And people are going to be bombarded with stuff during that week,
Oh yeah.
more so
Oh
than
yeah.
they already are. And there's a
Yeah.
lot already out there and potentially some of it conflicting. So, difficult emotions, uncomfortable feelings. The first thing to say is that your approach to that is possibly different to other people. And the first question that I'm going to ask you is, why do we try to avoid them?
Mm.
Because most people here, if you're here, maybe you want to avoid them. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Again, in the comments, let us know what you are looking for when you're joining us today. But why do we try to avoid those feelings that potentially we think are uncomfortable?
Yeah. So I want to start off firstly with like an example, and it's an example which is probably quite common. And if you look at sort of, I don't know, try to rewind to being like 2 years old, you've just started walking, running probably, and you fall over, you graze your knee, and you start crying, right? And you start crying because it hurts. And what generally do people say to those kids? What's the message? The first message is, oh, don't cry. I'll give you a lot, you'll get a lollipop or an ice cream or something essentially to stop the noise, right? To stop the noise. And that for me is the first example that I think that a lot of people get in their lives where we're not being encouraged to feel the feeling that we're feeling. We're crying because we're in pain, and that's okay. It's okay to cry when you feel pain. And so as we go throughout our lives, and the message that we're getting many times from where we're socialized, from society, from media, from school, is that being positive, being confident, being I don't know, like non-confrontational, let's say, getting on with people, people pleasing, this kind of thing is the accepted way of behaving and the accepted way of being. Now that's all good, but we don't live our lives every day, every moment like that. We don't have happy moments all the time. We don't experience joy. We don't experience love all the time. That is just not what the human experience is made up of. These uncomfortable feelings, these difficult emotions that we have exist, and what we have is potentially the messages. And what you'll see, no doubt, with Mental Health Awareness Week coming up, is lots of techniques, lots of strategies to how do you feel those emotions less, and how do you distract yourself from those emotions? How do you avoid those emotions? How do you escape those emotions? Now, there are lots of different ways we do that with technique strategies. As we grow up, we develop our own coping mechanisms and we develop our own coping strategies in order to deal with uncomfortable emotions. When we are able to understand our emotions and actually accept them for what they are, this is a different way of looking at it. So I guess what short answer to your question, Jamie, is yeah, I don't want people to avoid their emotions. I don't want people to escape those emotions. And I think that too many times we are trying to avoid those emotions too quickly.
I think if you're watching this, there's a potential that you might think this is going to go unbelievably deep, and I'm not sure I can stop that happening.
No,
But
I think
just
it's already happened, hasn't it? Yeah.
I'm there. I think just try and I think you said a couple of times there about looking at yourself and your own experiences, and I guess I've got a super simple question for you. You basically just mentioned how you would, I'm not going to say encourage, but you don't discourage people from allowing feelings.
Yeah.
Now, if I feel sad, I don't know if it's my automatic response, but certainly my response these days, which may be based on my conditioning, is to try and make myself not feel sad.
Yeah.
You're almost saying, no, you can feel sad. That's fine. Why? Why is that fine?
The reason that that's fine is human beings have been evolving for billions of years, both physically and psychologically. So the idea that a feeling or a feeling state or that an experience that a human being can have is like wrong or should be avoided, that doesn't make sense scientifically. Like the emotion exists for a reason. The emotion exists because of evolution. We wouldn't experience it if it didn't have a place. Okay. Now, what I'm saying is not to do what makes sense to you. If you feel sad and you want to, like get some ice cream, then that's fine. The problem is the decision making and the thought process that comes with all of that. So the idea is then, okay, I'm feeling sad, therefore I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to feel better. Now, what that could be is a whole bunch of different things. And that is, could be ice cream, it could be alcohol, it could be self-harm, it could be, a whole bunch of addictions that come with that. The key thing for me is, it's okay to feel, to not feel okay, that classic sentence there. Because from my experience, and again, I always encourage people to look at their own experience here, is that feelings come and they go. They come and go. There's times when we feel sad. There's times when we feel happy. There's times when we feel anxious or worried. And there's times where we feel joy and love. And that can all happen within the same day. And so we shouldn't be afraid of feeling those anxious or worried or those sad states, because then actually what happens is it's the fear of those things that then directs our behavior, directs our thinking, directs a lot of our daily lives in order to kind of avoid feeling those things. It directs our behavior, and that can direct our behavior in a whole bunch of weird and wonderful ways. Yeah.
That makes sense. I think one of the things that you said there, and I've heard you say it a lot before, is about um, no feeling lasts forever. Do you want to
Mm.
just elaborate a bit more on that and why you say that and the truth behind that?
Yeah. So again, always, I'll keep saying this, like, look to your own experience. What's really important is that you don't believe me, and that's again a really key part of what I say is look to your own evidence. And when we say that no feeling lasts forever, again, look at your own experience. Have you ever had a feeling that has lasted forever? Chances are the answer is no. Now, why that's important? Why is that important? Because most, if not many, let's say many enduring psychological challenges, many enduring mental health challenges are built on this idea, on the thought, on the belief that the way that I'm feeling in this moment is going to be the way that I feel now, for that's it, for the rest of my life. And when we're able to understand and know from our own experience that that's not the case, because it's not possible for it to be a case, it's impossible for a feeling to last absolutely forever, that is really solid ground. That's a solid foundation for us to build whatever you want on. That doesn't mean that you don't, feel sad for a really prolonged period of time. That doesn't mean that depression doesn't exist. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that these experiences change. They take on different flavors, different colors, different contexts in different situations, and are perceived differently by different people. Yeah.
So I think you kind of, in a way, you're talking about acceptance of the process that just generally happens. And something that I've seen quite a lot is about take the workplace. When someone has a physical injury, it's clear and obvious, and we know the steps to take to help that person come back.
Mm.
And what is being encouraged, and I think will probably come up again in Mental Health Awareness Week, is how are you? And if someone isn't right or doesn't feel well psychologically, is taking that on the same significance level as if it's as a physical injury.
Mm.
So where I'm going with this is based on what you said. My background is as a physiologist, and basically, as my time as an athlete, my goal was to run faster across a certain distance. When you run, when you do any exercise, there's physiological processes which happen which will limit your performance. And the reason why they do that is to stop you getting into a place which can cause harm for yourself. But then what the aim of training is to extend the limit at which you can get to before your performance has to be reduced.
Mm-hmm.
People look for strategies, techniques, anything and everything to avoid feeling a certain way.
Mm.
Is that not just a way of training, like it is physically, but psychologically? And if so, is that a bad thing to be focused on rather than just the acceptance? Because I understand what you say about acceptance, but it doesn't mean that I still like it.
Mm-hmm. So the way that I would use your analogy would be to say, if I was running a marathon, if I was training for a marathon, um, it's important that I get the most relevant training that I can. I'm not going to be running. So if I was training for a marathon and I was just doing like sprints every day, I was just sprinted for 100 meters every day, it's not going to help me in my marathon. In
Right.
fact, it might actually harm me in that marathon day. And so that would be how I would use that analogy. So in terms of the strategies, the techniques, there's space for everything. And it's really important that you do what works for you, and always, again, look to your own experience. But what is more effective long term, when people are really looking about well-being, or when I look at well-being, the key essence is, where is your attention? Is your attention on this present moment, or is it elsewhere? How do you process and how do you understand your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions? When you experience a thought from the past, that a thought about the past, let's say, how do you process that? Like, what meaning do you associate with that? So when we are associating meaning with feelings, with thoughts, when we're doing that, we're letting that direct our behavior, but also it's having an impact also on the way that we think about certain things. And what I would say is that that's doing 100-meter sprint training for a marathon.
Yeah.
It's really not helping, and actually it's probably going to cane your trainers by the time you get to the start line, and yeah, potentially not be helpful long term. So for me, what I like to encourage is marathon specific training, let's say,
Yeah.
rather than training that might not be as specific. Yeah.
And maybe that's where the differentiation between the two is specifically, because when you want to run a marathon, there is a set training program that will work pretty much with everyone. It's quite a
Mm.
standard routine that you follow.
But
Mental
again,
well-being,
that doesn't mean you can't run a marathon. You just probably won't be able to do it very as well as you'd
yeah,
like, right? So that's
yeah.
really important as well, is that people will have their own coping mechanisms and their strategies that they've built up throughout the years, right? And so some people, that's why it's really interesting, because some people will get up at 5 o'clock, they'll do their yoga, they'll have their herbal tea, they'll do their visualizations for the day, they'll set their agenda for the day, and then there's a really great joke where it's like, right, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have done all my daily routine and I'm ready to
Yeah.
hit the day, right? But and that's really important, is that whatever works for you is really important, but it's not the technique or the strategy that is doing the heavy lifting here. It's the fact that you are a human being who is able to deal with really anything that comes your way. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think that's it's good way to take it though, because maybe it comes down to, I don't know. Here's an example. When we advise people on their physical health, we get very, very similar questions and common questions.
Mm,
And the answer that we give back is occasionally quite similar, because you know the answer. And I like to talk about kind of weight management at times, and how weight management for me, and in my experience, is not about people's knowledge of diet. It's not about people's knowledge of exercise. And it's not about the fact that they don't know that being overweight isn't healthy for them.
mm,
Those things are all very clear. And I think that's something which is really wrong about how we look at people that are overweight, as if they're not smart,
mm,
because
mm,
they know these things.
mm,
The
mm,
problems are complex and come back to much more than that. And that's thrown me. Can't remember where
mm.
I was going.
I don't know where
Uh,
you were going with that.
hang on. And so
But the
with
principles are the same. The principles are always
well,
the same.
what I think the thing is that I would say, when people look at their physical health, is be more confident in what you know.
Mm,
Like, you asking me what's the best thing for weight loss, and that my first question back would be, have you lost weight in the past? Yes. How did you do it?
mm,
This and this. Do that. Don't
mm,
do anything else, because you know what works. So
mm,
and similarly with what you're saying about mental well-being, right? If you're training your mental marathon,
mm,
you know what things are going to help you towards that goal.
mhm,
But you see, so and so says they use a mindfulness app, and you see
mm, mm,
someone else
mm,
saying they
mm.
go for a daily walk, and they don't have the confidence to say, actually, good for you, but this works
Yeah,
for me. Do you think it can
absolutely.
come down? Can that help people? Is just be strong in your
100%.
belief of yourself.
100%. Because there's, again, a really common belief is that I'm doing it wrong. I must be doing something wrong. Like, I have to
Mhm.
be meditating. I don't meditate. How often should I be meditating? It's like, well, I don't meditate. So as much as you want, like whatever makes
Mhm.
sense to you. Like, I wouldn't recommend people meditate. I wouldn't recommend people do anything for their well-being. And the reason that is because your well-being is 100% innate. Like, babies don't need therapy. Babies are fine. What's happened is we've learned certain behaviors. We've throughout the years created certain beliefs, certain thought patterns that take us to places that are, yeah, like not very nice, and essentially give us lots of things to think about which are unnecessary. So we create a lot of unnecessary stress, we create a lot of unnecessary worry for ourselves. Now, as we start to understand that, you can start to unpick and unravel and uncover these things that are creating you more stress or creating you more worry. And as you start to shine a light on it, then you go, oh, okay, now I'm starting to understand things better. Oh, normally I would, you know do this, but actually I know that that never really helps, so I'm gonna do something different.
Yeah, I
The
think.
famous quote, one of my favorites, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and and expecting different results. And that's the key thing for me, is like it's really interesting that the conversation around mental health is very, very interesting. If you look at the older generations generally, in the statistics and in the research, are underrepresented in the mental health statistics. Now, generally, I would say it's because they found effective coping mechanisms, effective strategies, and they're not worried that much about it. They're just getting on with it.
Mm.
And the younger people these days are overrepresented in the statistics, and we have more mental health awareness than ever. So really, they're better educated, which is a good thing, but they're better educated on awareness. They're not better educated at how they deal with these emotions, how they
Yeah.
deal with things. So actually, they're seeking help from experts who, again, potentially are telling them to do strategies, do these techniques, and then there's usually a shelf life for a strategy and technique. Usually it will last a certain period of time, and then you have to find something else. And
I think
yeah,
it's important that we hope, also, if anyone's still there, make sure you let us know in the
yeah, please
comments.
do ask
Let us know if you're
questions.
still
Or
with
like, are
us,
you,
or
yeah,
this
finding
makes
this
sense.
interesting? I don't know.
But I think that what I would say as someone who isn't an expert in this field is that I can empathize with people, because there is so much that you're
There is,
told, and it's
there is.
actually like, yeah, I mean, I don't remember what I used to think about my own mental well-being 10 years ago, but I don't think it was a lot. And Henry, I'm concerned you might be doing yourself out of a job, because all you're saying is, no, don't listen to me, just do what you know.
Hmm.
But I think that's a really good way to look at it. But I guess the question is that when people are looking at strategies and techniques, just to kind of bring this together, is what are people looking for then when they use a strategy or
Quick
technique
fix,
like?
quick fix, quick
But
fix. So
where are they
it's the
taking their
classic.
mind though? Like what is, so for you, if it's not a strategy or technique, but
Hmm.
say it's something which does have a positive impact on your mental well-being,
Hmm.
what is it doing to your mind? So is it taking you to a place?
So what I would say is that, okay, so there is going to be an impact. The reason that there's going to be an impact is because of the association of the impact that you've already created for yourself. Now that, if we unpick that, I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
what?
So yeah, exactly, right. And this is why exercise, if you have an association, for example, um, let's say spiders. A good example is they did a research project with, I say it's a research project, it was more of like an interesting anecdote, but they took people who had arachnophobia and they put them in, they hooked them up to ECG and stuff. And they basically said, right, in a moment, we're going to bring through a spider into the room. And physiological response went through the roof from people who are scared of spiders. But the spider was not in the room yet. What happened was they had a thought about a spider and they had a response, because what they've created is an association of fear with spiders. So it's not even the spider itself, it's the thought of a spider.
Sure.
So in exactly the same way, if you like, for example, think, okay, I'm feeling really stressed out, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. Coffee's going to calm me down. You create that association, but what you create is a closed loop, and you create this that association, and then you go, right, okay, well, I'm really stressed, so I need a cup of coffee, and then when I had the cup of coffee, I felt less stressed, so therefore the coffee helped my stress level. And that happens unconsciously. It happens completely unconsciously, and we create those associations all the time. So what I would say is that I'm not saying that a technique or strategy won't lead to a relief, you know, but that is exactly what it is. It's a temporary relief. It's a temporary relief from the situation that you're in, temporary relief from the feeling that you're having. Our feeling states change all the time. So let's say we were always using strategies and techniques, then we're always constantly on the lookout for a feeling in order to use a strategy and technique. That sounds like a lot of work. That sounds like a lot of work. From my perspective, shameless plug, Mindful Mondays,
Yeah, get it
12:30
in
every
there.
Monday. Get it on the same channel here. But what we do with that is we explore our feelings, we explore our emotions, and we realize that our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings, actually, when we shine a light on them, In a 5-minute period, you can have a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings and not do very much with them. You don't have to do anything with them. But oftentimes people go, oh, I had this thought, I had this idea, I had this feeling, I've got to do something now. And it's like, no, you don't. You can just leave it if you want and just see what happens.
So I think we've got one final question, and then I'm going to just
Perfect.
wrap it up. But I think the question is related to exactly what you just said, and I think you're going to have quite a strong view on this. And I would encourage you.
Okay.
This session is called Straight Talk. Hang on.
Straight talk. Okay,
Hang
fine.
on.
Can you get it up on the screen?
Straight Talk. This is what it's
Straight
called. It's
talk.
called Straight Talk. So with
Can
that
we
in
get the
mind,
question
Henry.
up?
Oh yeah, of course I can. Good
Yeah,
point.
people can
So
see.
I don't
Yeah.
know if everyone can see this, but it
Yeah.
basically says, I've read up a lot on listening to your heart more, which is often the feeling versus the thought in your brain. And that reminded me of the spider story, which is seen as your inner parent or coach. Is this something you have more insight? So
Yeah.
gut feeling, heard people talk about that. Trust
Mhm.
your gut.
Mhm.
It's called, hang on, before you answer, it's called Straight Talk. And
Mhm.
this is your opinion. So
Yeah, 100%.
tell us
Okay, fine.
what do you
What
think?
my thoughts? Yeah, so I would say that that is not a bad direction to look in. Okay, I would say that um, trusting your heart is definitely, I would say that is a good place to point towards rather than trusting your thoughts. And the reason that is because your thoughts are a result of the conditioning that you've had. So essentially, your socialization, your upbringing, and you're right. I think the inner parent coach, absolutely. Your thoughts. Another way to look at it is the ego or the intellect, or some people call it the monkey mind. And essentially, the objective of the ego is to maintain the ego. So the idea of the ego is listen to me, because the more you listen to me, then the more focus you put on me. Now, this inner voice is something that's developed from the age of, I would say, starts probably at the age of 2 or 3. And what happens is we're starting to make sense of the world. We're starting to make sense of, right, if I throw this water bottle at the wall, I will get mum's attention. And therefore, I want mum's attention. Therefore, I will throw the water bottle at the wall. What happens is over the years, we build up this trust with this inner voice. We build this trust with the thoughts that we have until it's unbreakable. So what I would say is, and again, it's exactly what we explore in the Mindful Monday sessions. What I would say is that that's a good direction to go in, which is to listen to your heart more. What I would say is that the ego, the inner voice, will try to hijack that, and they will try to say, "This is your heart," because they go, "Hold on a minute, you're not listening to me." So this is your heart speaking, this isn't your head speaking. So that's something just to be mindful of, is that it will try to get hijacked. But yeah, I would say that if I was to give any advice on what to do, I would say do what makes sense in the moment that you're in. Human beings do that anyway. Like every single human being, when we move through the experience that we're having, we make we make decisions based on what makes sense in the moment. And if you just make that decision, that's the piece of advice I would say. When we start to overthink it, we can um, we can stop ourselves, or we can create problems for ourselves that didn't exist in the first place. But yeah, I would say if it makes sense now, brilliant. Do what makes sense now. And then it might not lead to the desired outcome. But again, it's important that we let go of our expectations of what that desired outcome is as well, because you'll be able to deal with it. Like you'll be able to change course, or you can always change the decision that you make, or change your mind. So
I think from someone who isn't on Henry's level of understanding, but what I have learned from him, and I can give like a real life example, is there's certain events that will happen that you'll get a response, like a physical response, and it'll be immediate and you don't have time to do anything but react to it. But then there's others, like an email,
mm,
and you'll read it and your heart rate goes up. and then I did this recently. My heart rate went up, and I was like panicking a bit about it. And then I tried to think, well, why are you panicking? And the reason why I was panicking because I was like, well, because if that means that, then that means that,
Hmm.
and then now I'm homeless. What? That's
Yeah.
not happened at all. And then reality was, I I like my response to that was like, right, I need to find more to realize whether or not this is a good or a bad thing. And annoyingly, it was nothing. And I was like,
Mm.
why did you do that? But so I think it's an ongoing journey and an ongoing challenge to question yourself and to see, is this actually real? Is this what's happening? And that will help. But Henry, I think we've covered a lot. So
Mm.
what I would say is, hopefully everyone's still with us and enjoyed it. It's really good to see so many people here want to be involved in these kinds of conversations. And May is is a time when we are doing even more than we already do, but we do a lot, and we are keen to do more. And join our events throughout the month of May, and it's specifically between the 10th and the 14th. We've got all of our sessions. Henry, we've got webinars, we've got educational
Yeah.
talks, we've got mindfulness, we've got mindful exercise, yoga, got an interview with Johnny Wilkinson. So
Yeah.
please do make sure you make the most of these things. Henry will be leading the program, so you'll hear a lot more about his kind of opinions and his experience and his knowledge. And I think my takeaway is that we have probably been we've probably been conditioned to think that we need to avoid feeling a certain way. But what we can do is take a more scientific approach of our own well-being, and that can inform what's best for us and how we feel.
Mm.
But it's a huge topic, and I think we can explore it much more. But Henry, thanks for your time. Does that
Thank
summarize
you.
a little snippet of what you said?
It's yeah, I
Have you
guess.
enjoyed it?
I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah,
great. I can't believe
cool.
people are still here, but
I
yeah,
love it.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us. And again, we'll be back with much more of these sessions. So make sure you get the rest of our events in April as well as May. And we look forward to doing a lot more of this soon. So take care in the meantime.